Copyright law is a complicated beast, and if you're a composer, you really do have to understand it if you want to be competitive in the 21st century. I'm going to be covering the essentials of copyright, why it exists, what it protects, and how you can keep your music safe.
Good to go.
Also, I am not providing any legal advice. I'm just a composer and I'm not an intellectual property lawyer, so please keep that in mind. In addition, this is going to benefit mostly composers of concert music. I will not be covering all the details of copyright protection for media composers or for songwriters, so if you're in that camp, you might want to do some additional research. With that being said, let's dive in. Why copyright exists. Now, copyright law dates back to 18th century England, where the printing press made it possible to mass produce written works. Now, without any sorts of protections at the time, authors were at risk of having their works illegally reproduced. So that's why the Statute of Anne in 1709 was the very first copyright law of its kind, where it allowed for 14 years of protection of a work plus one renewal, leading up to 28 years total. Fast forward to a small country called the United States, where its constitution was enacted in 1789. Then believe it or not, a year later, we actually had our first US copyright law in 1790. And for decades afterward, the copyright law remained relatively unchanged even until the modern era. It took all the way up to 1976 for the copyright law to be revised, where it said that a copyright protects the duration of the creator's life plus another
50 years.
Then in 1998, there was another law passed that helped extend the copyright protections even further. For example, works created after 1978 allowed for the protection of the creator's life plus 70 years. Works made between 1923 and 1978 were protected for 95 years. Anything before
1929.
Well, that's public domain. This means that creative works like Beethoven's symphonies and even Mickey Mouse are fair game, but your own works, well, you have a little bit more protections. What copyright protects? Now, copyrights protect the expression of an idea, not the idea itself. And note that I said copyrights, plural. This is because copyright really expands into 5 bundles of rights that you get. So what's included in this bundle of rights? Well, for composers, this includes the exclusive rights to reproduce your work, distribute it publicly, create derivative works, such as arrangements, to perform it publicly, and finally to display it publicly. And this is one of the misconceptions that people don't really understand about copyright. Once you have your music written down in any fixed medium, it's automatically copyrighted and you have all of those protections that I just mentioned.
Good to go.
This also includes manuscript works, voice recordings, writing digital notation. Any of these ways of physically writing it down onto a fixed medium means that you're officially copyrighted. But if you want full protection in case there's an infringement on your work and you want to pursue that in court, you're going to have to officially register it with the US Copyright Office. Now, what this gives you is this time-stamped proof of ownership that you can use in case there are any disputes that arise. And this is where I don't recommend composers go register their works unless they're at a really high level and you're at risk of having your music infringed at that level. For most composers, it's not going to ever get to that point. Even for myself, I only have one of my works copyrighted, and that was really in the beginning stages of my composing career where I just wanted to see what it was like. It's quite expensive to register even a single work, and it takes a long time for it to be officially processed. Again, I don't really recommend that composers do this. Now we're going to talk about what copyright does not protect. Here's where things get tricky. Copyright doesn't protect your ideas, it's only the way you express them. This is why chord progressions cannot be copyrighted. Even titles are not even copyrighted. In addition, compositional techniques or generic styles cannot be copyrighted. And if you're composing work for a job such as for a publisher or a film studio, that's considered work for hire, meaning that your employer often owns the rights to those works, so it's always important to read those contracts very carefully. Let's talk about fair use and infringement. Fair use is still a very tricky concept in copyright law, and some things that it protects includes scanning pages of music to your iPad or making additional photocopies for a bad page turn. But don't confuse fair use with complete free reign. Unauthorized use of copyrighted material can still land you in hot water even if you think it's fair use. And now if you or someone else violates a copyright, that's called infringement. Infringement occurs when two pieces of music are substantially similar. Even a short sequence of notes can count. And the other requirement is that the infringer had access to your music. If it's coincidence, it's usually resolved with a cease and desist. But intentional copying? Now that's a whole legal battle, and you're going to need the Eagle team. Now, by going through the trouble of learning how copyright law works and how it protects your music, you're doing way more than the average composer would in terms of understanding how the music industry works. If you enjoyed this video and you want more practical advice to being a composer in the modern day, then check out this video next where I talk about the importance of making a good title page to make your music stand out. Thank you so much for watching, and keep writing.